Hello again there folks, Lone Adventurer here. Thank you very much for stumbling your way upon my channel and joining me for this Grimdark adventure. Today I'm going to be introducing you to a role-playing game, a solo-specific role-playing game called Grimscar. This is a game that I backed on Kickstarter, I would say late last year or early this year. It's a game that I backed because there were a number of aspects of it that I found particularly intriguing, and we'll get into those. This video is going to be a overview of the game, I would say. I'm just going to flick through and have a little chat and try and give you a sense of the shape of the game, how it plays and how it is a little different to other solo games. And then character creation. Possibly the start of a little bit of play, but I'll be getting into that proper in a second video. Before I get to that, can I ask you to consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more solo adventures just like this. I play a lot of different games, so do take a moment to scan back over the years of playthrough videos that are now housed on the Lone Adventurer channel. There is something for everybody. Now, I did not receive this game too long ago, and I knew it was one I wanted to get to quickly because I was quite excited to play it, but another reason why I wanted to get to it in a timely fashion is that the creators of the game have launched a second Kickstarter. So if you watch this and you like the look of it, there is an opportunity right now to get yourself a copy along with some new expansions and some different versions of the game. Like I think there was always a hardback version. This is the paperback version, but I think there's going to be a ring-bound version as well. I'm quite a fan of ring-bound copies of games because they lie flat on the table. But yeah, the Kickstarter is up and running as we speak, or at least at time of release of this video. So I would encourage you, if you like the look of it, to go and check it out and back a interesting new designer. Speaking of which, this is designed by Gunner Almr. Project director is Quinton Olafsson. No AI art, which is cool. The art is by Jake Abingdon. Testers Lord Gwyndion. I'm sure I've seen the name Lord Gwyndion before. Might be a viewer of the channel even. Worth pointing out at this point that this is an 18+ game. If you are watching with someone younger than that, I would say probably this is not the game to be played by someone under the age of 18. It highlights here body horror, mind control and violence. But I would say the body horror is the bit that sort of takes this game outside the comfort zone of some players. I would say that I'm not particularly keen on body horror and extreme violence. I do like violent films in some contexts and styles, but body horror isn't particularly for me. But in written form I don't really mind, and this is a game that I wanted to play, so I sort of personally am able to look past it. So I might just read this introductory paragraph here to give us a sense of the deal with Grimscar. Grimscar RPG is a solo-player role-playing game set in a grim, dark, fantasy and medieval world. You will explore the Dark Weald, a massive, unending, deathly forest that surrounds the town of Grimscar. There is no escape for its citizens through the dangerous forest. They are being choked, starved and cursed with an unending winter. Grimscar is your home. You are Grimscarian and you must find answers. You will interact with the townsfolk, complete quests, develop your character and help your people somehow bring salvation to this forsaken place. So this is a fairly dark and brutal game, and that fact is reflected in a number of the mechanics and certainly in the enemies that you face and the places that you visit. So to give you a quick overview of how this game works, essentially you are going to take on a series of quests, one at a time. You gain these quests by visiting certain individuals within the town of Grimscar, and that is one of the ways that this game differentiates itself from other solo games to my mind. There isn't a table of quests that you take on. They're sort of peppered through a directory of individuals. So a big chunk of this book is made up of a directory, the town addendum, which I will find now. Here we go. We've got approachable citizens. Each one has a what do you call these? A portrait, along with some descriptive detail about them and a little interaction that you have with them. And then you've got these quests that are marked in these shaded spots. And so you can sort of read through a little bit of a narrative about the quest, and then read about what the quest is, and then take on one of those quests. And there's quite a few. Farnham Ravencloud, Foley Easterly, Nerida Greenwood, Roderick Cedar. So there's quite a few. And then eventually we get to restricted citizens, such as Oliver Green and Ivor Charnock. And I haven't looked at the restricted citizens. I haven't really even looked, and there's quite a few of those as well. I haven't even really looked at all of the approachable citizens, although probably it's worth getting a sense of who they all are. Some of them do jobs that you'll need to visit them to help you with, such as, I think Martha Shaw allows you to heal, for example. But then Martha also has a quest for you which is not related to healing you. I think there's someone else you can visit to buy stuff, for example, and sell stuff. But yeah, that's interesting to me. The fact that the quests are peppered throughout this little town addendum is it's just a little bit different and perhaps a little bit more immersive. So that's cool. That's one of the ways it's different. So you're gaining these quests, you get a quest, and you go out into the forest around the town. We've got this map here, and the town is in the middle, and we've got 3 levels of forest, 3 tiers of forest. You've got the safest forest nearest the town, then you've got some forest beyond that that is slightly less safe, and then some high-risk forest beyond even that. And in fact, the first expansion is the Deep Thicket expansion. It's like a little zine, and I think this allows you to go even further still by breaking into a deep thicket beyond even the most dangerous forest. So the way the exploration works is very easy and straightforward to comprehend. We have some tables that we will use as we explore, some D100 tables that dictate what happens to you in the different parts of the forest. So this is the start. This is the forest table for the standard forest around the town there. And so every time you enter a new hex, you roll a dice, and then you see what happens. I have to admit, I'm a little bit concerned that the things in this table are going to become overly familiar. Like, some of them do vary. So for example, if you go into a shadowy grove, you roll a d6, on a 1 to a 3 something happens, a 4 and a 5 something happens differently, and on a 6+ something different still happens. So there is a bit of variety hidden within this table. But yeah, I do wonder whether the encounters in the table are going to become a bit overly familiar. Obviously you can move further still into the dark forest, and then you have access to another table of even spookier encounters. And then the savage forest beyond that, even spookier still. This is a book that's taken a leaf out of the game design book of Toby Lancaster over at DR Games, in that it provides a whole bunch of tables, so much so that it requires a little table index at the back to find the table that you need. But I kind of like that. I like lots of tables. This isn't a journaling game, although I think probably it would benefit from a bit of light journaling as you're going, particularly keeping track of the missions that you've done, the people who you've visited, which ones you've completed missions for, and maybe that would unlock some stuff. They might ask you, for example, there's like secret missions that you might come across, and other bits and pieces like unique items you might find that maybe someone would ask you for. I've sort of purposefully not read too much of the book so that I'm discovering stuff at the same time as you, or discovering stuff as I'm going. but it's not a journaling game per se. It's quite a mechanically driven game, and as you know, that's something that I quite like, but very narrative heavy, I would say. There's lots of flavour in here, lots of details and descriptions and narrative passages to immerse you in the game. Obviously, we've also got some combat, and the combat is interesting, simultaneously quite straightforward, but with some complexity in the decisions that you have to make. And it's complex enough that there's a little combat sheet that you definitely, I would say, want to think about using in order to track what's going on in a combat. The designer of the game, or rather the project director, Quinton, kindly got in contact with me and sent me these little game cards, which I think are definitely beneficial. We've got some cards to remind us of the combat mechanics, but we've also got these cards for the various terrifying creatures that you will meet as you are exploring the Dark Weald. And that's beneficial, I think. I mean, all this information is in the back of the book, so you don't really need this. And that's beneficial, I think, because I have found myself flicking around the book quite a lot during combat, not only to refer to the rules, but also because as you are playing, there are certain consequences during combat, and you have to use these consequence tables at the back of the book here to see what awful things happen during combat. So that, I would say, is a summary of how the game works. You're wandering around the forest, trying to complete quests, fighting things, finding stuff, having a range of terrifying encounters. And the things that I kind of like that drew me to the game that are a little bit different are the exploration mechanics, the discovery of the quests through the citizen addendum, or whatever it's called, and the unusual combat as well. And the fact, finally, I would say, that it provides a very fully realised world, and I like a bit of creative world building from game designers. I find it interesting when I discover designers who are determined to create a fully realised world. Sometimes it's kind of cool if, as a player, you are encouraged to flesh out and build the world yourself. That can be fun as well, but I like a fully realised world, and that's definitely what Grimscar is providing. With that somewhat waffly introduction out of the way, I think what we'll do is we'll just get into some character creation, and I'll explain a few other mechanics and bits and pieces as we go through that. So I'm just going to bring on the character sheet, and then I will bring you back. Right, we need some kind of bleak medieval name for our character. I don't think there's a character name table in here. I'm not too sure what to go for. Do you know what's come to my mind? Is Morn, which I think was the name of a side character in a Star Trek TV show. I think it was. If I'm right, bonus points to whoever tells me which character and which show that was. We need an ex-profession because we are playing a volunteer, someone who hopes to help the town out, and we are leaving behind us a traditional profession. So now that I've mentioned that, let's grab the profession. I want to read you the introduction bit as well and talk a little bit about how that sort of sets the scene in terms of the approach of the game, but we'll get to that. We've got 8 possible professions. Should we just roll a d8 to work that out? Here we go. 4. So we are an ex-glove maker, and that just gives us +1 patience. So I will put glove maker on here. We'll remember that when we're writing out our stats. And I'm just going to turn back to the beginning and read you this introductory text. And I think this gives you an idea of what the rulebook is like to a certain degree, in that very narrative heavy elements are scattered throughout this book. And that kind of helps immerse you in the story, I think, and is a little different to some other games I've come across. So in character creation, we are straight into a narrative passage. You arrive at the timber-framed town hall where you knock on the thick wooden door. It takes a few moments for a stooping man with a bald head to appear. It's Alderman Silas Croft. "Oh, another volunteer. Good, good. I didn't expect anyone today. Come on in." You follow him into a candle-lit room where a long, dark, wooded table stands with some items on it. A cold, notably clean fireplace sits in one wall. The leaded windows frame warped glass. "Here." He hands you a parchment, and you roll it out and see a rough map of the Dark Weald. You exclaim that it's mostly empty. "Well, that's the state of affairs, I'm afraid. Since this damned winter we've had few visitors, and some say the pathways have disappeared. Our hunters are all dead or missing. The forest has changed. That's why you're here, is it not? To help out?" You nod, and he hands you a tired-looking sword. "That's all we have, I'm afraid, but it is metal, which is not that common in these parts. Oh, and this." He slides a wooden buckler across to you. You frown. "I know, it's not much, but it's better than nothing. There are other weapons and armour to be found in town. You could speak to Farnham Ravencloud. I think people are hoarding them, though. In any case, what we need are provisions and supplies." He jangles an empty-sounding pouch at you. "Bring them here when you find them. You will be rewarded." He tries a smile, but his features form a grimace as he encourages you to the door, and you stumble out into the street. The door ajar, he looks at you. "I think I knew your parents. Good sort. You'll do well. Maybe you might even get to see Keslar of Brabazon, if your efforts prove fruitful." He then shuts the door, and you are left standing in the quiet street. So we've got a cool little bit of narrative there. Immediately sort of sets the scene and establishes the deal here. This town has been cut off for quite some time. Having said that, it's still early days. This is the first winter that since the forest has sort of like encroached around the town and become a more deadly place to visit. So something has happened in order to make the Dark Weald a more impassable place. So the town has been cut off, and we are going to be going out into the forest with the hopes of lessening the degree to which Grimscar is separated from the rest of the world by the Dark Weald. Alright, so we're going to get into the character creation here. The stats are a little bit different, and actually they're not sort of fully explained. We've got these psyche stats, and you can sort of tell what they're tracking by what they are called. During combat, you're sort of spending points almost to help you out. Obviously, we'll get to that a little bit more at some point. So the psyche stats are rage, hatred, butcher, and then on the positive side, patience, pity, and hope. So the first three represent our anger at the state of the world, and the second three represent our desire for good to prevail, and they all start at 5. And there's a note here that they cannot go below 0. Then we've got some physical stats, and I suppose these are more traditional stats, although they're named a little bit differently. But we've got a survival stat, you can imagine what that helps you with. A charm stat, that's sort of like interacting with people. Reputation, which represents how well you are regarded in the town. And wear, which is a bad thing that goes up as you get worn out, essentially. So survival starts at 4, charm starts at 2, reputation at 1, and wear just starts at 0, so we won't fill that in. During the course of play, we can take minor or major wounds. We can survive 10 minor wounds and 3 major wounds. Major wounds are worse, as you would imagine. Major wounds have effects, so there's different types of major wound, and each one has a different kind of negative effect on play. Minor wounds don't do that. You can heal minor wounds more easily than major wounds, and we're tracking our max here in something called a death line. Yeah, it's the line at which if you go above, then you die, or if you meet it even, I think, because that's the max. So if we get 3 major wounds, we have met our major wound death line and we die. And if we get 10 minor wounds, we have met our minor wound death line and we die. Profession we have done. I forgot to give us a +1 on patience, but I can turn a 5 into a 6 quite easily. There we go. Combat dice and reserve dice. So our combat dice when we start is D6. I think you can move up to 2 combat dice at some point, hence the 2 boxes there. And then your reserve dice I think is also the same. That starts on D4. Basically during combat, very roughly, you roll your combat dice, you roll your enemy's combat dice, you see who's got the highest number. Then if you want to, you can also roll your reserve dice, but you can only do that once per combat. And then there's a range of other ways you can adjust the score in order to change the outcome of the combat, but obviously we'll get to that when we get to that. Weapons. We start with a blunted sword and a wooden buckler. They give you no bonus, but allow you to engage and afford you your combat and reserve dice. Write them on your sheet. Now the idea with these areas is to write everything that you are wearing in there. And you can wear quite a bit of armour and you can wear quite a bit of clothing that will improve your warmth. So I'm not sure that those are big enough. I think probably this game could have benefited from a 2-sheet character sheet with some spots for notes and things. I'm going to break off into a blank sheet at some point to keep track of these things. When I was playing off camera, let me show you my character sheet. You can see that I was having a moderately rough time. My hope was down to 1. I was on 5 wear, 5 minor wounds, but I was sort of having to squeeze things in here. And the same with the inventory down here. It does say, I think, in the rulebook, you can carry as much as you can write in the inventory box. However, I like to sort of keep notes about what things do. Anyway, that was a bit of a digression there. Now, under armour, it says you start with a wooden buckler, which has a +1 armour save. So that is in opposition to what it says here. Was it here? Where was it? Yeah, it says the wooden buckler gives you no bonus there, but here it says that actually the wooden buckler gives you a +1 bonus. I'm just going to put +1 next to the buckler there, and then I might just squeeze a little box on the side here and put a +1 in there. So that'll be where we track the total maximum armour bonus that is given to us by the various bits of armour, assuming we do find some more. I was pretty good during my playthrough off camera at forgetting to do an armour saving throw during combat. And so I'm pretty sure I could have avoided some of those minor wounds that you saw on my character sheet just then, if I were better at remembering that. So I'm going to try and get better at remembering that. How are we doing? Clothing and warmth. Yes, we'll come back to clothing and warmth. Basically, quite often you need to stay warm. But here, inventory, we've got some starting items. We've got an oil lamp. Don't really know what that's good for. Maybe nothing. The backpack, which allows us to carry things. 1 ration. So I might put the ration down here. I'm assuming gaining additional rations is something you can do, so I'll track that with a little box that we can tick as we use them. 2 copper coins. We've got copper coins, half copper coins, and wooden talons, I think they're called. So copper coins are worth more than half copper coins, which are worth more than wooden talons. And it says we get a tunic, which is on our body, warmth 3. So for now, I'll squeeze it in here. Tunic, I'll put a B for body and a 3. And then we'll do the same over here. We'll have a total. But we've also got cloth boots, leg warm 2. So we'll go L and 2. And then we've got a total of 5. That is more or less it, I would say. Yeah, so the final thing I'll say on character creation was I was a little disappointed that the X profession table just modified one thing. I would have liked to have had a special ability based upon your profession, because now that we've added on +1 to our pity, being a glove maker no longer means anything to the mechanics of the game. And I think that's probably a little bit of a shame. That's kind of it for character creation, really. So I think we can probably just make a start on play now. We need to get a quest from somebody. Not sure who we're going to visit. It's worth noting that there is a base quest, a standard quest, so we could go out into the world right now and just do the Alderman's quest. The way questing works in this game is that you are generally going out to perform specific objectives and find particular things. There's a lot of gathering and locating sort of stuff, I think, going on. But the key items are represented in the exploration tables by tier quest items. So if you're exploring the nearest area, you will find potentially tier 1 quest items. Next ring out, you'll find tier 2 quest items. And then out in the terrifying woods, I can't remember the name of them. Oh, it says here, Savage Forest. Out in the Savage Forest, you'll find tier 3 quest items. So as you are looking at quests, it will say, oh, you need to go and find this particular type of root or something. It is a tier 1 quest item. And then as soon as you find a tier 1 quest item, it is that thing that you were looking for. It is that root. And then you can go back and complete the quest. However, you might find yourself finding 2 or 3 quest items if you're very, very lucky, and you only need 1 to complete the quest. If that is the case, you can come and deliver the surplus quest items to the Alderman, and he will give you, what will he give you? There's a quest, an Alderman's quest table, so he will give you some random stuff for those quest items that are surplus to your needs. Anyway, we need to find ourselves a quest. We've got some flavour here about the town, the history of Grimscar, the current situation, and the Dark Weald, magic and belief, demons, gods. So there's a little bit of flavour text here. We won't look at it all, but you can have a quick read there if you want. There you go, I'll leave it on there for a second. And we'll read this little introductory bit here. Grimscar is a small town made up of overhanging timbered buildings in a land that is plentiful in wood but lacking in metals. It is located in the middle of an unending forest known as the Dark Weald and is part of a network of villages and towns called the Boerhood. You've lived there all your life. You are Grimscarian. You've been told about the history of Grimscar. So here's the history of Grimscar. But beyond that, we have the Citizens' Addendum. This page here gives you an overview of who all the people are. We won't read that for the time being. Last time I did a quest for Martha Shaw, so just to keep it interesting for myself, maybe we'll visit Beric Bramwell and get a quest from Beric. Beric Bramwell, the town carpenter. Beric's workshop is located at the edge of the town and nearest to the forest line. At first you think it's deserted, but as you approach you see a dim light in one of the windows. A deep voice bids you enter when you knock on the wide wooden door. Inside you find a man labouring at a workbench, sanding a handle smooth. The walls are lined with empty racks, and there are open barrels standing around that were once full of lengths of timber. The floor is covered in curling wooden shavings. You spot a long metal blade, a rare item in the town, hanging on the wall above the workbench, from which Beric stands and greets you. It's a bit tricky to open the book. I mean, I could, force this out, but I don't want to damage my book. And when I'm playing on my own, I sort of hold it like that. Maybe I can now. What can I do for you? You switch it around and ask him the same. Ah, I see you are one of the volunteers now. Well, you're braver than me. You look at the man. He has muscular forearms and hair sprouting from the open neck of his hemp shirt. He looks like he could handle himself. I think you can see what I'm in need of. Wood. Bloody wood. You'd think that wouldn't be a problem living in a forest, but as you know, we can't take it from the tree line because of the boundary accord, and the one time I did dare go in deeper, I found black marks on the wood of much of the withered trees. None of it was suitable for anything but burning, and as I fought to go deeper, I heard a terrifying cry and fled. It's not safe in there, but I figure you know that. So if you can find me some decent wood, I'll pay you good coin. He adds, If you should find an iron beech tree and cut me down a branch, I will use it to make nail wedges to repair some of the more precious buildings in the town. I know the people will be thankful. I mean, have you seen the town hall? You nod in agreement. The first tier 1 quest item that you find on your next journey into the Dark Weald is as follows. Wrapped in hemp, here is a bundle of green oak wood. They have been cut into neat lengths. Who's cut it? The quest is then completed when you return this to Beric, and he rewards you of 10 copper coins. You can spend 1 charm point to increase this to 15 copper coins, gain 1 reputation once the quest is complete. So that's pretty good. Beyond that, if we come across some iron beech trees and cut down a branch, although this is not a compulsory part of the quest, Beric will pay you an additional 5 copper coins. So that's our quest, Beric's wooden compass. So this is a separate quest. Beric's wooden compass. If you can find this special item, then you'll be rewarded. This is a one-time quest. So I think we can just keep an eye out for that. I think our main quest is wood for Beric. Alright, that might be a bit tricky to see, but I've written that our quest is wood for Beric. We need 1 tier 1 item, and optionally we can find some iron beech. So that is our quest. We know what we're doing. There's not much left to do apart from go into the Dark Weald and chance our arm and see if we can have a successful adventure out into the forest. Okay, so here is our map of the Dark Weald forest. Our town Grimscar is here in the middle, and we're going to be moving around these hexes as we explore, hoping to find a tier 1 quest item, which on this occasion will represent the wood that we are trying to find for the carpenter. It's worth noting that you can only explore 18 hexes in one journey, and I take that to mean that you can only enter 18 hexes, including backpedaling if you find yourself out here and you need to make your way back. So by the time you are entering your 18th hex, you need to make sure you are back near Grimscar and ready to go back in time for the end of the day, I guess. End of the day? Yes, because it is 1 hex per hour. So basically you've got 18 hours out in the woods and you've got to make it back before the end. So we are going to just get straight into the exploring, and we will talk about the way that it works, the various subtleties of the rules as we are going. So we're going to turn to the forest table, the tier 1 forest table. This is just regular forest. We're going to roll our D100. Got 1 dice for the 10s and 1 dice for the 1s. We'll see what we find. And bear in mind, it could be gruesome, it could be terrifying. Yes, you have been warned. Hanging trees. Several of the trees here have objects hanging from their branches as if they were meant to be wind chimes. But as you draw closer, you realise that these are no ordinary ornaments. Rather than tubes of wood, these are fingers. See, I told you. Pretty gruesome. Rather than tubes of wood, there are fingers, ears and noses hanging from twine, each ripped from their owner, grisly tendrils of flesh swaying in the wind. The ground is covered in blood. You may inspect them or move on. So we have the option here of rolling a d6 in order to inspect more closely. Now, glancing ahead, I can see that we're only going to succeed, only have something positive happen on a 5 or a 6. So I'm tempted to say we're not going to do that. We'll say we went this way. All you have to do is write a number. Okay, that's not easy to see, so I think we'll use the erasable pen. So that's a 1 there, and then we just use this to mark what we found. So that was hanging trees. So over on the left here, it's not the left, is it? That's the right, also known as the other left. Over on the right, we have a column with yes and no written in it, and that tells us whether the feature we have encountered is permanent. Some features are permanent, and that means that once we go back into Grimscar, if we come back out again, we'll encounter them again. If we encountered a permanent feature, we put a little P over here, and then when we go back into Grimscar, we would have to transfer the permanent features onto this map, which will be in place for as long as this character continues to explore the Dark Weald. And then every subsequent time you go back into the Dark Weald, you transfer the permanent features back over onto your map before you go out, and you would have to encounter them again if you wanted to go into that hex. So that was number 1. That was fairly uneventful. Let's have another hex. So we'll say we're going to go a little bit further away from Grimscar. We're going to go into this one. I think we're not going to leave the safety of the near forest in this particular occasion. I can tell you the forest near Grimscar is dangerous enough for the time being without going any further. And actually we're looking for a tier 1 quest item, and the tier 1 quest items are found in this area anyway. 25 gives us Fallen Scouts. So let me just get into the habit of writing this before we read the section. I think it makes sense to do it that way. This area is dense with hawthorn and brambles, and when you stumble upon a body laying on the ground, you nearly trip over it. Then you see another. The 2 bodies have been repeatedly branded, their flesh is seared and exposed. They carry nothing, but you recognise them as scouts from the village, probably sent to find a way through the dense wood. One you know by name, Irvin Yardley. You look around nervously. Roll 1d6. 2. Generally, a lower roll is bad in these instances. So a 1 to a 3, out of the bushes comes a Cin Fantatic. Their eyes are pools of agony as black fire erupts from the back of their head. Defend yourself. So I'm just looking here, and it says at the end you can also search the brambles and find enough berries for 1 ration worth 3 wooden tokens. I don't know whether that's linked just to if the beast is gone, the option on a 4 to a 6, or whether you can do that searching regardless of what you rolled, which is what I think I'm going to play, assuming we survive this encounter with the Cin Fantatic. So I'm going to just grab the combat cards in case I want to refer to those, because they are kind of handy. Then we'll find the Cin Fantatic. We'll have a little look at the Cin Fantatic. We will fill in the combat sheet and then do that combat, and that is probably where we're going to finish for the session. Assuming we beat it. The Cin Fantatic is not too dangerous a creature to be facing. Famous last words, but I've definitely already faced far worse. So looking at the Cin Fantatic, we can see that we've got a spooky picture of it. Their eyes are pools of agony as black fire erupts from the back of their head. Lovely. And we can see we've got a combat dice, which is D6. And you and the enemies can have combat dice up to D20, so D6 is pretty good. I mean, it's the same as ours, to be clear, as is the reserve dice. Exactly the same as ours, but those are decent odds. 6 minor wounds, that's not too bad. 2 major wounds. And we've got a trigger ability, so I have to keep an eye out for this. I don't think this has happened to me yet, or I just haven't remembered trigger abilities being a thing when it has happened. If on their combat roll they roll a 5, something bad happens, essentially. And we've got a reward for when we beat this enemy. So I'll just move the map out of the way. We'll flip this round so we're looking at our character sheet. This is our combat sheet, and this is our Cin Fantatic. So on the combat sheet, we're going to write in the death lines. That's how many wounds we can take and how many wounds the enemy can take. And we can take 10 and 3 major wounds, and the enemy can take 6 minor wounds and 2 major wounds. Then, do we need to write anything else in? You can write the name of the enemy. Yeah, do we have to do anything else? Probably not. I think that'll do for now. And we can make a start. So what we're going to do is we are going to roll our combat dice. Then we're going to roll the Cin Fantatic's combat dice, which is also a d6, and see who gets the highest. Initially, it really is that simple. There you go, that's my roll of 1. And that's the Cin Fantatic's roll of 6. Brilliant. So at this point, I could optionally roll my... But there's really no point. I could roll my reserve dice of d4, but I'm only going to get a maximum of 5, aren't I? So really, I'm just going to have to accept here that I have taken a minor wound. So we're going down to 9. That's not how I've been doing it. I've just been tracking the amount taken. So we have taken 1 minor wound, and then we're just going to try again and hope for a slightly more luck. 6 for us, 2 for the enemy. The enemy also has a reserve die, and so you have to do a little calculation to work out if they think they're going to draw on their battle reserves in order to sort of push themselves into a more advantageous situation. So the way you do that is you work out what half of their maximum reserve die score would be. So a d4, half of the maximum would be 2. And then if the difference is that or less, then they would use their reserve die. So is the difference between our score of 6 and their score of 2, is that equal to or less than half of their reserve die? And once you get into it, that makes a lot of sense. And once you get used to it, you don't have to really think of it too much. You can just instinctively work out what it's going to be. And I can tell that a difference of 4 is more than half of the maximum of a d4 roll, and therefore they're not going to use their combat die, and they're just going to go, oh, they're not going to take a minor wound, they're going to take a major wound. If the winning roll is double or higher than the loser's attack roll, then a major wound is inflicted. And obviously 6 is more than double 2, and therefore we're doing a major wound. And that is very, very good news. If the Cin Fantatic takes another major wound, we'll win. But even better than that, I think, is that a major wound results in a disadvantage going forward. So we turn to the creature major wound table, which is a d10 roll, and we find out what bad thing we've managed to do to the Cin Fantatic. A roll of 1, bursting wound. The flesh on the side of the beast bursts and blood spatters to the ground. It takes an additional minor wound. That could have been better, but oh, I've put that on the wrong one, haven't I? That's our column. That means that the creature has taken a minor wound and a major wound, and we're just going to note what type of major wound we did, just in case we need to remind ourselves later, but we probably won't. Okay, good round of combat. Let's push on. We're rolling purple for us, so I'm always rolling for our character first, for Morn first. 3, not amazing. Oh, and a 1. Now, the difference between our roll and the Cin Fantatic's roll is 2, and 2 is equal to half of the reserve dice of the Cin Fantatic. So the Cin Fantatic is going to use their reserve dice to try and catch up with us and best us in this round of combat. So that's 2. So the Cin Fantatic now has a total of 3, and we also have a total of 3. But the foe, the Cin Fantatic, has now used their reserve dice. You can only do that once. And I think I'm going to use my reserve dice as well, because I want to win this round of combat. So I'm going to roll the d4 as well, because our reserve dice, don't forget, is also a d4. Oh, and we've rolled a 1. Okay, well that at least takes us into the lead. So our attack score is now 4, and the Cin Fantatic's is 3. So we do win a round of combat, but unfortunately not to such a degree that we cause a major wound. Just a minor wound. But I'll take it, that's fine. But we've now both used our reserve die. So let's roll for us, for Morn. A 2, that's pretty rubbish. And a 3 for the Cin Fantatic. Now, do I want to take a minor wound, or do I want to use one of my psyche stats in order to improve the roll? And that is a tricky question to answer, because when you use your psyche stats, there are often negative outcomes. So I think I'm going to take a minor wound. So we've taken 2 now, but I don't want to take many more than that from this first enemy that we've encountered. So I think we're going to have to use our stats if that happens again. 3 for us. That was the wrong dice. That's going to confuse me. And a 5 for the enemy. Ugh. Okay, we're going to use something. Now, looking at these are all pretty high at the moment. I think I'll use my patience. So we're crossing out our patience. We are adding our patience on to our roll So that would give us 8. Yeah, but our maximum is 6. I'm just trying to work out if I can get us to a point where we've got double what the Cin Fantatic has, but I don't think we can. So we're on 8, they're on 5. Now we need to turn to the Patience consequence table. Is that what it's called? Yes, it is. So this is a D6 roll to see if anything bad happens. I'm going to find another D6 for this so I can keep these ones here to remind me what we've rolled. 3. So we'll turn on the Patience stat consequence table. You step away, waiting for the opening. The creature stumbles in, and although you cannot reach it again, you +1 to your next attack roll. So we've actually had a positive thing happen there. So that is good news. Now, when we use our Patience, Pity or Hope, then we have to -1 that stat. So that's going down to 4 now, which is a bit of a pity, but that's what you got to do. I've just remembered that I completely ignored the armor save when we received those 2 minor wounds. So that's frustrating. I'm going to put that card right there so that it's always there to remind me to do an armor save. Right, we just caused a minor wound to the Cin Fantatic, and we're going to roll again. This time I'm going to use the purple die for me and the red die for the enemy. Rubbish. Double rubbish. So I'm not going to use one of my stats this time to try and overcome it, but we will do an armor save roll. So the way this works is we're going to roll our combat dice again. I'm going to use this one, and then we're going to add on +1 because of our armor that we've got. What is it? I can't read my own writing. A buckler. And then if the total is over the enemy's attack roll, then we will mitigate a minor wound and reduce any major wounds that we happen to be accruing. Okay, fine. So we're taking a 3rd wound. Isn't this always the way it goes? Right, come on, let's have a good roll, for goodness sake. 3, that's hardly brilliant. And 2, so at least we have beaten the enemy. However, if we could get our 3 to double, then we're causing a major wound and we're finishing it off. And I think really we need to be doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to channel my hatred, and if you use, let's just double check this, if you use one of the negative psyche stats, rage, hatred or butcher, then you have to add 1 to that stat. So our hatred is going up to 6. But we're adding on a 5, so we've got a total of 8 compared to the enemy's 2. Obviously that's double, so that's enough to do a 2nd major wound. We don't need to check the details of the 2nd major wound because this one kills it. The creature is dead. We have killed the Cin Fantatic, thankfully. Now, because we used one of our psyche stats in the final round of combat that finished off the enemy, that means we gain 2 points of wear. So we've become worn out. So instead of having to roll on the hatred consequence table, because it's the final round, we're having to take 2 points of wear, and then the combat is over. Not too bad. We took 3 minor wounds, so that's not amazing. So I'm transferring those over onto our character sheet. And apologies if I ignored a trigger ability at any point. Did I? Did they roll any 5s? I can't remember. I'm not very good at remembering that. So you can see that the combat is, at its heart, quite straightforward. You're rolling an attack die for you, an attack die for your enemy, and comparing them. But then there are some other things you have to remember, and there are some interesting decisions that you have to make in terms of using your psyche stats. Now, I don't fully comprehend the consequences yet of the bad ones going up and the good ones going down. I haven't played enough to really see how that affects the game. But I think it's a safe bet to say that you don't want the bad ones to go up and you don't want the good ones to go down. So we're going to roll on the body search table to start with to see if the Cin Fantatic has got anything handy on it. And this is a D12 roll. Where's my D12? There it is. 11. Higher is better, I think. You find a small pot of healing balm, enough for 2 doses. each healing 1 minor wound, and 2d6 copper coins. That is pretty good. Okay, so we've got 6 copper coins, so that takes us up to a total of 8 copper coins. And we've got a healing balm, and each one heals 1 minor wound, so I don't see any reason why we can't just immediately use both doses. I think that's what we're going to do. So that will take... my eraser is somewhere else. So that's going to take us down to 1 minor wound. So that's a pretty good thing to find. Now, if we turn back to the encounter, the forest encounter that we had, which was the Fallen Scouts. Yeah, if you remember, I said I was going to decide that we can search after the end of the combat. It's not 100% clear, but I think we can. So it says here, you search the brambles and find enough berries for 1 ration worth 3 WT. Now we are recording rations down here. That's a little off screen. Let me just do that. So I don't know if this ration is worth more or less than a normal ration. I think I'm just going to bung it in there as a ration rather than worry too much about it. And it says you can spend a survival point and also find a trail to a stash one of the scouts must have hidden. It is a pot of healing balm with 2 doses. So is it worth spending a survival point for some more healing balm? I don't rightly know, but I think I'm going to do it. So survival goes down to 3, and we'll put healing balm here in the inventory with 2 squares representing the 2 doses that we can use it for to heal 2 minor wounds, and I think I can probably remember that. So there we go, that was our second encounter, and we had a bit of combat there. That was kind of cool. First video of Grimscar done. I am going to continue this on in at least one more video, maybe another one after that. We'll see how it goes. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. Let me know in the comments down below if you're a backer, if you've been playing it. I'd be interested to hear from some people who have been playing it a bit more than I have, to see how the game sort of progresses the further you get. Have you been able to get a character to a point where it is strong enough, i.e. it's got some better weapons and the stats are in a decent place, so that you can go into the Dark Forest and the Savage Forest and have encounters there as well? I'd be interested to hear. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed that, folks. Thank you very much if you made it this far, and do join me for the next part, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.